Hello and welcome to this session on pathways to support learners working towards GCSE and Grade 4. My name's Vicky Wood and I am the Subject Advisor for Maths and Statistics here at Pearson. So just a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a maths teacher, worked in state secondary school for the past 9 years before starting at Pearson earlier this year. I was also a head of year in my role at school, so had a lot of experience with students who were struggling to access lessons or to access school in particular. So I've got real passion for this subject, so hoping we can get a lot out of the session today. As part of my role as a subject advisor, I provide monthly subject updates. So that's all the key information that you need to know for all of the qualifications that we offer in mathematics and statistics. Any new releases, so all those amazing resources on the Maths Emporium, and timely support. So that could be revision resources, a focus on those in the run up to exams, resources to support those mock exams at appropriate times of year. So something there in every month specific to where we are in that school cycle. I also provide qualification and teaching support by email. So if you've got a query about any of the qualifications that we offer, whether that's to do with applications of the mark scheme or getting started in setting up to deliver a new qualification, you can email me with your queries on teachingmaths@pearson.com. And you can also book a one-to-one meeting with myself, so a Teams meeting. That's really helpful if you've got some specific queries about how you can, for example, run a qualification successfully with your specific environment, your specific cohort, and the challenges that you've got in your own setting. So we can talk through things in a bit more detail in those meetings. So a quick overview of the agenda. In this course, we've actually split it into 2 sessions. So this first session is very much focused on just understanding what the different entry level, level 1 and level 2 qualifications that are available to learners are, what are the key features of those, what different types of needs do they serve, and so you can get a really good foundation of knowledge of what these qualifications offer and which ones may be most suitable for your students. And in session 2, we're going to move on to look at some different pathways that could support the progression for students who are working towards GCSE and that eventual aim of grade 4. So we'll look at some strategies and resources to support students thinking in the longer term as you're bringing them in through Key Stage 3 from the start of Year 7 and building through to Key Stage 4. And then we'll also look at, what about your students that are entering Key Stage 4 or in Year 11 right now? What types of intervention, what kind of strategies could we use with those? And we'll also have a focus on specific support for students with SEND. So let's take a look at some of those entry level, level 1 and level 2 qualifications now. So before we look in detail at the specific qualifications that we offer at Pearson, I thought it'd be really useful just to have a bit of an overview of what these different qualification levels mean, so you can understand the context of kind of where they sit in relation to the GCSE. You'll see at the top here, there's a link on the title that will take you directly to the Gov website that gives you those explainers and links in directly to all the different qualification levels, the information on those. So entry level qualifications, so these sit below GCSE level. So these are suitable for your students that would be working below a grade 1. It's available at 3 sub-levels. So there's entry level 1, to entry level 2 and entry level 3, with entry level 3 being the most difficult. And underneath you can see a list of some different entry level qualifications. The ones that are highlighted in purple are the ones that are offered by Pearson, and these are the ones we'll look at in more detail. But I thought I'd also just include some of the other ones in case you've got an awareness, you've encountered those qualifications before. It gives you that idea of what it's comparable to, where they sit, that whole family of qualifications. looking at level 1 qualifications here, we can see within that list that the GCSE at grades 3, 2 and 1 is classed as a level 1 qualification. If you look on the specification for GCSE, it says level 1/level 2 as a qualification. So those grades below a pass grade are classed as a level 1 qualification. We've also got our level 1 award, so we've got our Edexcel awards in mathematics. We have level 1 functional skills. So probably what's really important to note at this stage is that the level of demand in a level 1 qualification is going to be comparable to that GCSE grades 1, 2 and 3. However, it's not as straightforward as, it's absolutely equivalent to a GCSE grade 2, for example. Because some of these qualifications are different sizes, so that means that they've got a smaller qualification size in terms of the hours to deliver. So it's not as straightforward as a one-to-one comparison. And then lastly, at level 2, we've got our GCSE at grades 4 and above. We've got level 2 Edexcel awards, and we've also got functional skills available at level 2. And again, the demand there is going to be equivalent to that grade 4 and above. So this little table here just summarises the different qualifications that we've got available at the entry level, level 1 and level 2. Entry level, we have something called the entry level certificate, and again that will be available at entry levels 1, 2 and 3. Functional skills is another qualification, and that covers that whole breadth. So we have entry level functional skills, again available at those 3 sub levels, and then there's also level 1 and level 2. Underneath that, we have got our Edexcel award in number and measure. Now this is available at level 1. Again, just a reminder that level 1 is kind of comparable in demand to that GCSE grades 1, 2 and 3. And then we've also got a level 2 award there. There are some Edexcel awards in algebra available as well. That's at level 2 and level 3. I've not included them here because they're not really suitable for the types of students' needs that we're discussing today. They're very much more for students who are already working at a grade 4 and above. And then underneath, we've just got that comparison to our GCSE 9-1 mathematics. So reminder, level 1 is comparable to grades 1, 2 and 3, and then level 2 is looking at that grade 4 and above. So the first qualification that we're going to look at in detail is the entry-level certificate in mathematics. So this is an entry-level qualification, so it's very much designed to meet the needs of learners who are currently working below a grade 1 GCSE level, so working towards accessing that GCSE standard. So for the entry-level certificate, as we previously mentioned, it's typically aimed at those learners who have got lower levels of prior attainment, so working towards that GCSE grade 1. And really specifically those students who might really struggle with that traditional style of qualification, that GCSE style of qualification. So it's very much designed to support the learner to, in a comfortable environment, to be able to show exactly what they can do. So it does cover a nice broad range of mathematical concepts, but I've noted here it is less complex and demanding than obviously the GCSE, because we're working towards GCSE at this level, but also in comparison to functional skills, it's more aligned with the GCSE, whereas functional skills is very much more about preparing students for entry into the workplace, for those financial basic numeracy skills they're going to need in later life. And so the reading comprehension, kind of the age-related comprehension that is required of that is more demanding than it is on the entry-level certificate. So this is very much more suited to students within a school setting and to younger students as well. The assessment is through a combination of tests and tasks, so at each level, and we'll look at those in more detail on subsequent slides. And when we say at the bottom here, the assessments are externally set, so they're produced by ourselves at Pearson. You would access those once you've registered for your students through the kind of gold padlock system, where your exams officer would be able to download them when you're ready to do those assessments with your students. It's internally marked, so you as the teacher would be the person who is marking that piece of work by reference to the mark schemes and the assessor guidance that's provided by ourselves. But there is that external verification process, and there's a work submission deadline every year, the 15th of May, where that work has to be submitted, and then candidates are awarded a pass or fail on the basis of their score. Worth noting as well here, the links in these slides, so at the title there, that will take you through to the qualification page, and then also if you click on the image of the specification here, that will take you through to the specification that outlines all of the content guidance in great detail. And it's worth noting as well, before we move on, that the guided learning hours for entry-level certificate are 120, so it is a similar size in terms of the GCSE. So the aims and objectives of this qualification, as stated in the specification, it's all about becoming fluent in the fundamentals of mathematics, and there's a very gradual build-up of reasoning and slightly more complex problems as we work through those entry levels. So here we have got a content overview of the ELC entry-level certificate. So you can see here the kind of skills and topics that are assessed at within each of the broad content areas at each of the entry levels 1, 2 and 3. And we can see then how it builds as we work through those entry levels. So this will give you a really nice kind of starting point, a guide as to understanding which entry level might be most suitable for your individual learners. You can use this in conjunction with things like the past papers, so that's some sample assessment materials to get a feel for which level do I think is going to be most suitable for this student, which one can they be successful at. And it's worth noting here that, you know, if your student does sit, for example, you do the assessment for entry level 1 fairly early in the year and they're really successful with that and they found it quite easy, and you've worked on entry level 2, you can they can do the assessment for entry level 2, and at the work submission you would just enter the work for the highest level that they had been successful at. So that would be what was entered for certification. So there's this flexibility there. You know, you're not restricted to think, well, they've done entry level 1 this year, I'm going to have to wait till next year to do entry level 2. You would just put them essentially straight into entry level 2 and get that certified in that year if they've been able to complete it. Entry level 3 includes a couple of content areas that are not assessed at entry levels 1 and 2. So you've got ratio and proportion and some basic algebra there. And entry level 3 also builds on to using a calculator. So everything at entry levels 1 and 2 is non-calculator. Entry level 3 builds into using a calculator. So there are 2 tests at entry level 3 and 1 task, one of the tests being a calculator. And it's really clearly defined as to which content can be assessed on the calculator test and which content would be non-calculator. So we'll see that in the next slides looking at the assessment structure. So here we can see the assessment structure for the entry-level certificate. So as I mentioned, entry levels 1 and 2, candidates would just sit 1 test and 1 task. And at entry level 3, that is 2 tests and 1 task. So we've got a non-calculator test and a calculator test at entry level 3. These tests are topic defined, so you can see that on the non-calculator test, they would be assessed on those topics, algebra, the given areas of geometry and statistics, and then on the calculator test, they would be assessed on the number content, ratio and proportion, perimeter and area, and their work on measures as well. So you know what to expect in each of those tests. Underneath, you've also got the various proportions. So for in each of the entry levels, the test will make up 60% of the qualification and the task will make up 40%. So just a little bit about what to expect from the different components of the assessment here. So the tests are very much a classical test style. Students will write their responses on the question paper. They can't use calculators in the tests, with the exception of the calculator test for entry level 3. And tasks are something that's quite different about ELC. This is what I suppose sets it apart really from a lot of the other qualifications. These tasks are designed to assess the candidate's communication and their problem solving skills. So this is very much done in a supportive, more informal environment. So teacher will be sat down with student at the desk. You can generally have some equipment there to support their comprehension and understanding, support them in actually being able to work through the task. So that might be some fake money. If it's a task involving money, for example, it might be some objects, counters. The task consists of kind of short open response questions based on some practical skills. So there's usually a context, and then there'll be a sequence of kind of questions that they have to work their way through. And they can use a calculator in the tasks, and Appendix 2 to the specification gives more guidance on calculators use in general. As a teacher, you are permitted to guide the student through the task, so you can explain what's required at each stage. And in terms of recording the evidence of the student responses, so the student could write their own responses, or the teacher could write down annotations based on the student's verbal response. So this is really, really helpful for those students for whom actually just getting their thought process from their brains onto paper is a massive struggle. This is very much designed to support them, and the evidence of the student responses can just be written down on some paper that goes with that task, and then that can be submitted for the moderation. So the sample assessment materials are exactly what they say. They're sample assessment materials that give you samples of tests and tasks, each of the different entry levels, that you can use as a guide to what to expect from the live assessment material, and as to give you a guide as to which level is going to be the one that's most appropriate for your students. Here we can see just the last 2 pages of that entry level 2 test, so we can see how it's just built up a little bit of difficulty till that final question there, where you've got a little bit of problem solving, a bit of context to read through. And here we've got the sample assessment material for entry level 2 for the task. So you can see this one's all based around using coins and the different combinations that can be used to purchase objects of different values. So you can absolutely imagine students sat down at a desk with the real money or fake money to manually be moving that around to group it into different ways to show how they can, for example, make 6p in different ways. And again, they might write that down, or the teacher could annotate, what the student has done, how they've shown you that they understand how they can make these different values in different ways with the coins that are provided. So it's worth noting as well that all of the tests and the tasks are sat under normal classroom conditions. So they're teacher supervised, manipulatives and objects can be used. That is the same for the tests as well. So you can also mix and match tests and tasks from different sets. So in the live assessment materials, there's 3 sets of tests and tasks for each levels. You can have a look at those, and you might say, right, well, I think the test from set 1 and the task from set 3 is going to be the one that suits my students, the way their brain works the most. So I'm going to go with that. Those other sets, they're also there to allow students to reset any of the components should they need to. So if, for example, they get a pass grade on the task but not on the test, then they could reset the test component using one of the tests from the other sets of live assessments. So as I mentioned, there's 3 sets of live assessments, so there's a maximum of 3 attempts really that a student could have at passing each level in each academic year. I just want to highlight now the FAQ section of the website for entry-level certificate. So this has got answers to pretty much any question you might have before as you're setting up to deliver, or even as you're delivering and you're starting to administer the assessments. So the link to that's at the top of the slide here, and just a note of key dates at the side there. So the entry deadline each year is the 21st of Feb, and the deadline to submit your centre marks and the moderation samples is the 15th of May each year. So the last thing to mention on ELC is something called the Access to Foundation tier. Now, that link at the top of the slide takes you through to a section of the Math Emporium website that has got all of the Access to Foundation tier resources. Now, these are specifically designed to support learners in bridging the gap from entry level 3 to GCSE. So this is something that you would use for students who have completed entry level 3 as a next step to support them on that pathway to success at GCSE. So it's got some diagnostic questions, there are keywords, common misconceptions, there's checking and problem solving activities. And what's really good about these is that it's got teacher notes on how to support students with a specific focus on how you might support students with SEND as well. There's also a mapping of the objectives from entry level 3 to the related objectives in the GCSE scheme of work. And those related, what we call access objectives, so where it's covering the same content as the entry level 3, but being built upon, there are resources for those specifically, so that can be used to help support that kind of bridge between entry level 3 and you kind of grade 1, grade 2 at GCSE. So really helpful resource to use as that next step following entry level 3 to support that progression to GCSE. So now let's move on to take a look at the functional skills qualifications. So a bit of an overview of the qualification here, just to mention this link at the top of the slide will take you through to the qualification page for functional skills. And here on the right hand side, you've got a little image for something called the welcome guide. If you click on that, it'll take you to that document as well, and that's got everything you need, checklists to get you set up, your centre approved to deliver functional skills, and get everything you need to get you start to deliver and assess that qualification. So as I talked about a bit earlier with entry-level certificate, there's a real different feel to functional skills. It's very much designed to help learners develop practical skills in maths that are relevant to everyday life and work. So it is strongly context-based. It is got a very strong problem-solving emphasis. It is available, as we saw earlier on, at all of the levels we're looking at today. So entry levels 1, 2, and 3. And then there are level 1 and level 2 qualifications available as well. So there's a clear path of progression through all of those different levels. So the guided learning hours for functional skills are 55 hours, and that is the same for each of the entry levels or the level 1 or level 2 qualifications. So it doesn't matter which level it is, the guided learning hours are the same, they're 55. So that is smaller size of qualification than the GCSE. And again, this is similar to ELC in that candidates are awarded a pass or fail based on the outcomes of their assessments. So just going to look at the specifications for the different levels now. So again, you've got the image here for the specification document. So if you click through to that, that will take you to the document that's got the full detail in there. So we've got entry levels 1 to 3. Quick recap there, below GCSE level, entry level 3 sits just below that GCSE grade 1. And these qualifications are most suitable for those students that are working below that grade 1 who need to focus on improving their basic numeracy skills. The assessment, where entry-level functional skills consists of just one externally set, internally marked and externally verified assessment at each of the levels. So this is similar to entry-level certificate in that it's a test that is produced by us, it's marked by the teacher, and then there's an external verification process for that. But it's just one test here rather than the test and the task at ELC. And this is available as it's paper-based and it's on demand. So when you feel that your learner is ready to sit that assessment in the year, you would book in that test date and get access to those assessment materials and be able to put your learners through that. So it's not a set exam series. Learners can sit these assessments at any time during the year. So here we've got the specification for level 1 and level 2 functional skills. And again, if you click through there, you'll be able to access that full document. And level 1 qualification, so that demand level is comparable to those GCSE grades 1 to 3. But it is a small, the functional skills is a smaller size of qualification. It's 55 guided learning hours as opposed to 120. So it's just important to make that distinction. Level 1 functional skills, it's very much focusing on assessing practical math skills. There's a strong focus on real life situations, on problem solving. As we'll see, problem solving forms 75% of the assessment objectives for this qualification. That's at all of the levels. And this level 1 qualification is generally recognised as a bit of a basic standard for accessing many jobs. And both level 1 and level 2 functional skills are very commonly delivered in FE settings as part of any learning pathways that learners might be on there, or as part of as an apprenticeship programme. So that's very common for these qualifications to be delivered in that kind of context. So the level 2, that demand level has increased. So here we're working with a comparable level of mathematical demand to that GCSE grade 4 or higher. And of course, this is representing a really good working standard of maths. It can be a way for learners to access lots of job opportunities because, again, it's comparable in terms of the demand to that GCSE grade 4 or higher. So a really good working standard of maths at that level 2. And with that, of course, comes a really strong focus on problem solving and critical thinking. So it's a lot more advanced in terms of the skills that learners are required to demonstrate. So assessment at level 1 and for level 2 consists, again, it's just one test. So it's an externally assessed assessment for each level. So here Pearson are producing the test, but we're also marking it as well. So this isn't internally marked. That's just for the entry-level qualification. So you don't have to worry about that side of things here. And these assessments at level 1 and level 2, you can opt to either have that as a paper-based assessment or an on-screen assessment. And again, this is on demand. So this is something that, when the learners are ready to sit these assessments, then you would book in the dates. There's a certain kind of time frame. For the paper-based, you've got to give a little bit more notice, but for the on-screen, certainly, you can do those at very, very short notice. So you can sit those at any point during the year. So here we've got a content overview, so similar to what we saw for the entry-level certificate, that just gives the topics, the skills that are being assessed at each of the entry levels here. So this is for entry-level functional skills. So we've got our broad content areas of number, measure, shape and space, and then handling information and data. And what we see here in functional skills, and it's the key difference to ELC, the entry-level certificate, is that we've got a specific requirement on solving mathematical problems and decision making. And at the entry level, that is very much constrained, focused on solving simple problems from a single content area that require one step or process to solve. So at entry level, it's very straightforward problem solving, but of course the candidate may be required to read that context, that problem, and understand what they need to do, but the process itself would only ever be a single step or process that it would need to perform in order to solve that problem. So sticking with the entry-level functional skills, we're going to just look at the assessment structure here. So what you can see here at the top is that each test is split into two sections. We've got section A, which is non-calculator, that forms 25% of the qualification, and then section B, which is the calculator section, is 75%. And underneath there, in that larger table, we have got the assessment objectives. This is what's going to be assessed in those tests. And this is the same for each of the levels. That the assessment weighting is 75% on problem solving, with the remaining 25% being on underpinning skills, so the ability to do mathematics when not part of a problem. So a very strong problem solving focus here. The questions are generally going to be in context. Students are going to have a good working level of reading comprehension. They're certainly going to need support with that. And in terms of the contexts that are given, again, it's focused very much on real life, so it may be more suitable for older students. For those younger students, you're talking, any year 9 or younger, that they're not going to necessarily have the life experience or exposure to these kind of contexts to be able to comprehend them fully enough to be able to demonstrate then their problem solving skills. So the problem solving skills at entry level 1, it's about using that mathematical information and recognise and use simple mathematical terms, using the methods given to produce, check and present results make sense, and to provide simple explanations for results. So as we move to entry level 2, we can see that those weightings remain the same. It's 25% non-calculator, 75% calculator. But we'll just draw your attention to the fact that the assessment timings are increased slightly. So whereas it was 20 minutes on section A at entry level 1, it's now 25 minutes. And then entry level 1 for section B was 60 minutes, it's now 65 minutes. And we can see that problem solving requirement has now been enhanced. They need to be able to present appropriate explanations using numbers, measures, simple diagrams, simple charts and symbols appropriate to that content at entry level 2. So moving up to entry level 3 now, we can see that for section A, the time, the size of that part of the assessment has remained the same at 25 minutes, 9 marks. But for section B, that's now larger, it's 75 minutes, but overall weightings remain the same at 25%, 75%. The problem solving requirements have again increased at entry level 3, and one of the key things here is about using the methods given in the content areas to produce, check and present results that make sense to an appropriate level of accuracy, and also being able to present the results with appropriate and reasoned explanation, again using the numbers, measures, diagrams, charts that are appropriate to entry level 3. And we saw in the content areas specific things, representations will only come in at entry level 3 that won't be there in entry level 2. So assessing very much that new content as well. So here we've got an example of some past papers. The link at the top will take you to a past paper section of the website where you can take a look through past papers for all of the different levels. This is a sample for entry level 3 from the non-calculator paper, just so you can get a feel for the level that it is really pitched at. Again, entry level 3 being kind of just below that grade 1 GCSE. So questions are always presented in context here. We've got Tomo, he wants to buy a house, he wants to clean his flat, and there's quite often a question that the students have to answer. So for example, in question 4 here, is Tomo correct? Show why you think this. So really building that problem solving style that students will encounter at GCSE as well. So understanding that they need to give a conclusion and that they need to show some working to back up that conclusion. And sticking with past paper sets, we can see a sample here from the section B, the calculator part of the assessment. This is for entry level 3, the same set as we looked at on the last slide. And again, we've got that consistent style of question, is latter correct? Show why you think this. Really nice structure to these, I feel, for there's a guide, tick what the correct answer is and show your working and your answer here. So a really nice scaffolding for the students in terms of just understanding how to present the solutions and that they have to give a conclusion as well. So moving on to the level 1 and level 2 functional skills qualifications now. So we've got that content overview here, so you can see those topics and skills that are being assessed. under those content areas at level 1 and how that builds and extends in level 2. And as we can see, there's a strong focus on those real life numeracy skills, so things like calculating with money, simple budgeting, tax, interest. So a strong focus on those real world contexts there. And at level 1 and level 2, the problem solving and decision making demand is much increased. So at level 1, students are expected to be able to solve what are classed as straightforward problems. Now, these can draw on a combination of any 2 content areas and involve one or more connected step or process to solve. So students are going to have to be able to make the links between the different content areas and start to build on that multi-step problem solving skills. Now at level 2, that is increased even further to solve what are classed as complex problems, which can be a combination of up to 3 different content areas that students might need to connect together, draw connections between. And this will typically be problems that require some level of planning and can involve 2 or more connected processes, steps or processes to solve. So really building up, remembering that level 2 qualification is pitched at that similar level demand of GCSE grade 4 and above. So that is the standard that we would expect there. So looking at the assessment structure, first of all, for level 1, the weightings remain the same throughout. It's always 25% non-calculator, 75% calculator. But I will draw your attention to the fact that the assessment time is increased again. So we're looking at 1 hour 30 for that calculator section, sticking with the 25 minutes on the non-calc. So it's very heavily weighted towards that calculator assessment. So really good for building those calculator skills with students. Again, the assessment objective weightings here are the same throughout, which is 25% on those underpinning skills, 75% of the assessment being on the problem solving. And again, we've got more detail here about what is expected of students at this level 1. So they need to have that fluency to be able to actually apply the processes, to work through to the solutions, but they also need to be able to do things like analyse and interpret their answers in the context of the original problem. They need to be able to do sense checking, check the reasonableness of answers, and they need to be able to present their results with appropriate explanation and interpretation, and demonstrating simple reasoning to support the process and show consistency with the evidence presented. So a quick look at some past paper examples for level 1 now. So this is from the calculator section of the test. And the first thing that jumps out to you is the increased amount of information that's presented within the questions here. So a lot for students to be able to read, comprehend and to organise before they can get started with solving those problems. So the page on the left there, that's the first question in that test, and then we've got a question from later on the right hand side. And what I think is important to note there is you've got a question with a lot of information presented at the top, and then we need to just show, is Ashley correct? Show why you think this, and that's a 5-mark question. So a significant amount of planning, understanding a multi-step process for the students to go through in order to secure those 5 marks. So that's something that's quite different really from what we've seen at the entry-level qualifications, and represents that increased demand and that strong focus on the problem-solving skills. So looking at level 2 now and that assessment structure, it's broadly consistent with level 1. We've got similar sizes for section A and B, the same timings, 25 minutes and 1 hour and 30 minutes for those. And the same requirements on the problem solving side of things, except this time students are expected to be able to do this with what are termed as complex problems, which are those that can draw on up to 3 different content areas and will typically involve planning and 2 or more connected processes or steps to solve. And we can see that increased level of demand as we just take a look at the past paper example here for level 2. Again, this is from the calculator paper, but a lot for students to do, reminding ourselves that this is a comparable level of demand to GCSE grade 4 and higher. So useful to know in terms of what that progression path is for functional skills, but in terms of the students that we're talking about supporting today, this may well be something that forms part of a next steps for them as they move into further education, their next steps after school or college, whether that's an apprenticeship. They may well encounter a level 2 functional skills qualification at that stage. But for right now, if they're struggling to access that grade 4, obviously the level of demand here is probably going to be a stretch too far for those students and not supportive for what they need right now. So if functional skills is something that you think might be suitable for your learners, then we've got information on this side about how you can get started to get set up to deliver functional skills. So loads of information in that welcome guide that we mentioned earlier. Got the FAQs on the website, which has got tons of useful information, and forms of administration as well. So all the forms that you'll need to fill in. And the other thing that I'd really, really highly recommend for anyone considering delivering functional skills and learning more is to watch this training video, which was an event that was around just a couple of months ago by Chris Briggs, who is our specialist for functional skills, which is Functional Skills for Schools and Introduction. So that has got all of the information that you need to know about how to register learners, to get centre approval, to get set up, and really learn more in detail about those specific qualifications. And on this slide, you can just see a little bit of the welcome guide that I'd mentioned. You've got checklists here for everything from the administration, the quality assurance side of things, how to deal with on-screen testing. So that is really a key document if you are considering delivering functional skills, and sitting down with that with your exams officer would be a great first step to finding out everything you need to know to get up and running with that. Chris, who ran the training course, has also set up this wonderful web page, which is our functional skills mathematics resources. There's tons of excellent resources on here, and I'd really recommend just taking a look through these, even if you're not going to do the functional skills qualification. There's lots of really useful stuff that you can use with your GCSE classes, even if they're not doing functional skills. As we've seen, it's really supportive of those problem solving type questions. So lots of fantastic stuff on there, pitched at the entry level specific resources. We've got level 1 and level 2 specific resources, and some really useful things like starter quizzes and exemplification documents, along with exemplars of student works at each level as well. And the last thing to mention on functional skills is that we have got our upcoming Festival of Functionality, which is taking place in September and October, and which you can access full details of by following the link at the top of that slide. There's a range of different training events that are taking place over those first few weeks of term. Some great math-specific training events, such as helping students to decipher the questions, so how to support that problem solving at level 1 and level 2, along with some lessons learned and some really useful lessons that are focused specifically on supporting students with additional needs. Okay, and so lastly, but by no means least, we are going to take a look at the Edexcel Awards in number and measure. So as usual, the links at the top there will take you to the qualification page, and by clicking the image here on the right, you will be able to access the specification. Now, the Edexcel Awards in number and measure are available at level 1 and level 2, and the aim of these qualifications are for students to develop a thorough knowledge and understanding of concepts in number and measure, and a sound foundation of mathematical techniques. So there is a significant crossover here with the GCSE content, and so these qualifications in particular offer a really excellent foundation progression to access that GCSE grade 4. So whereas your entry-level certificates focus on basic numeracy, the awards develop proficiency in those mathematical techniques across a range of key areas. They are different to functional skills, however, as we saw, functional skills focuses really on real-world problem solving, with the majority of the questions there in context and the associated reading comprehension demand that goes with that. Whereas the Edexcel awards are more skills focused, and we'll see in the assessment objectives on the next slides how how they are different to functional skills. So out of all of the qualifications for students, if you've got working that are kind of at that kind of grade 1 or 2 level, and or grade 3, and you're looking to support that progression to maybe just boost their grade and eventual progression towards grade 4, these qualifications do offer a really, really excellent basis to support that progression. So we'll see as we start to look at the content how it's going to support that progression for GCSE. So just as we move on to look at the assessment objectives, one of the things that I should have mentioned that was on the previous slide was that a key difference here with the Edexcel Awards is to the other qualifications we've looked at today, is that this is the only qualification that is assessed via a formal kind of high stakes formal examination. So there are 2 exam series every year. So students can sit the exam in either January or in June. So it can form a really good practice of that high stakes formal examination experience for students who have got their GCSE coming up. So you may have students sit the Edexcel Award in number and measure in a January series and with their GCSE in June, or you can imagine sitting it in year 10 as a nice lead in as part of that progression to their formal GCSE exam at the end of year 11. So on this slide here, we've got the assessment objectives and weightings, and you can see at a glance these are very different to functional skills. So AO1 is about demonstrating knowledge, understanding and skills in number without a calculator, and that's 25 to 35% at level 1 and 35 to 45% at level 2. That AO2 is all about knowledge and understanding and skills in measure. So that includes things like your time, measures, area and perimeter, volume, tables and charts. And the weightings there are 35 to 45% at level 1 and 25 to 35% at level 2. So the weightings kind of switch between level 1 and level 2 for these first 2 assessment objectives. Level 1 is more heavily weighted towards the measure, and then level 2 is more heavily weighted towards the number skills. AO3 is about those number skills, but with using a calculator, and that's the same proportion for level 1 and level 2 of 25 to 35% of the overall qualification. So this is also a key difference to the functional skills, in that, as we saw there with functional skills, 75% of the qualification was assessed via a calculator-based assessment, whereas in the Edexcel Awards in number and measure, the calculator skills will form 25 to 35% of the overall qualification. So here we've got a bit of a content overview for what topics and skills are assessed in that Edexcel Award number and measure at level 1 and level 2. And I've broken this down into more of a topic basis rather than the overarching broad content areas, because it allows us to see in detail what exactly is assessed, for example, for fractions. So you can see here the significant crossover with those key topics at GCSE. This is really covering that essential foundational knowledge and skills that students really need to have a good depth of understanding with to be able to be successful and to start to access those higher grades at GCSE. So level 1, as a reminder, obviously that's comparable to grades 1 to 3. Level 2 is comparable in demand to that grade 4 or higher. So for terms of students we're looking at, that level 1 qualification can be a really excellent support for students working towards their grade 4. Will give them absolutely tons of practice in these really, really key skills, and allow them to experience success in working with problems in those. So just taking a look at how the Edexcel awards are examined. For each level, level 1 and level 2, the award is examined by a single assessment for each of those levels. And each assessment consists of 2 sections. So you've got section A and section B. And it's worth just noting that these are kind of formally sat exams. They are available in 2 series in the year. The students can sit the exam in either January or June, giving them that really valuable real exam experience. So for section A, that consists of 50 marks of the paper, and that lasts for 1 hour, and that forms the calculator section of the paper. After the first hour of the examination, they have to hand their calculators in. And then section B is 30 minutes, and that has 30 marks assigned to it. You might wonder about the difference to the was it 25 to 35% calculator skills for number assessed in the assessment objectives. That's because the calculator section as well includes the assessment objective for measure. So that AO2 can be assessed via either non-calc or calculator skills. So the calculator number and then the calculator measure elements make up that part A of the assessment. And each award is awarded either a pass or fail. So here we can take a look at some past papers, and again the link at the top of the slide there will take you to the section of the website that's got all of the past papers available, and this is for level 1. So on the left hand side we've got a sample from the calculator section A, and then on the right hand side we've got a sample page from the non-calculator section B. What I really like about these is that it looks very similar to the GCSE exams, but what you'll notice is it's a little bit more straightforward. There is often some nice scaffolding to the questions. For example, in this question on the left here with the area, students are asked to work out the length of the missing side specifically as part A to then assist them in working out part B. And we can also see that nice dividing line there that just helps them recognise that they're going to have to calculate the area of 2 rectangles. So those little changes make these questions a lot more accessible to students and help to build that skill set for them to then be able to access questions that are actually at that GCSE standard. On the right hand side you've got your non-calc, so lots of lovely little nice questions with fractions there, and then a nice little estimation question as well. But again, a bit more scaffolding than you might see in a GCSE equivalent question on the same topic. Some options there for students to choose from so that they can make a bit of an informed choice. And then just briefly a look at past papers from level 2. So immediately you can see the increased level of demand here for students, reminding ourselves that this is equivalent demand to GCSE grade 4 and higher. So these are very much similar to the level of demand we might see in the crossover questions between foundation and higher at that foundation tier GCSE. Some really quite tricky stuff in there, but again a lovely bank of additional resources, additional questions for those classes that you've got that are working at grade 4 and above and are maybe looking to boost your grades 3 to 4 or your grades 4 to 5. This can be really helpful resource to use with those classes. There are published textbooks available to support these qualifications. So there's a workbook for both level 1 and level 2. Those links will take you through to the website where you can order copies if you would so wish to. But again, there's a bank of resources, bank of past papers that are freely available on the website to support the teaching of this qualification, and also on our Maths Emporium as well. So here we can see a link to the Maths Emporium resources available for the Edexcel Awards. Some ones I'd really just like to point out, these theme papers. So these are little practice papers that are themed by topic. So you would, say you're looking for some extra practice work to do on fractions, I think subtracting fractions, then you'll be able to find a theme paper there, but full of exam questions for students to practice on. So they're excellent, and again, not just limited to students doing the qualification. As a GCSE teacher working with a foundation set class, I would absolutely be using these resources as just a really great source, great bank of extra questions, specifically supporting those students who might be working below a grade 4. I'd be using those level 1 theme papers all the time with them. There are practice papers as well, so very much in the style of the real exams that come at similar size, and there's also schemes of work there if you are looking to deliver this course with a lead up to students sitting those exams. Those schemes of work will be able to support you in doing that. So to wrap up, we're going to take a look at the key information by qualification. On this slide, we can just see a little bit of a comparison between the qualifications that we've looked at today. So that's got all the key information that you need there, how they're assessed, what the guided learning hours are, the aims and objectives, and those key dates that you need. So on this slide, we can see the entry deadlines and fees for the current academic year 24-25 for each of the qualifications, and there's a link again to all of that information on our websites that's at the top there. Something that's just useful to know is that for functional skills, how that system works is slightly different. For functional skills entry level, the fee is payable on registration. That registration for a student can last for 5 years, but you do need a new registration at each level. So at each entry level, but it's absolutely fine to switch them. There's no fee for switching entry level. So if you enter them at entry level 1 and then you subsequently decide, I actually want them to do the assessment at entry level 2, then you can switch that in the year with no additional charge. For functional skills level 1 and 2, it's slightly different in that you don't pay a fee at the point at which you register the student, but the fee is payable when you book the assessment. So as soon as you book that in, that's when you pay the fee for the student then. Just in terms of that functional skills as well, the standards verification process, just the timelines for that. The standards verifier will be allocated usually just before Christmas, and they will arrange a remote visit to the centre sometime in the period between February and June. So that's kind of the timelines in terms of when you can expect that standards verification to happen. Okay, so that's was really done for today's session. So just a quick recap of the key points. So there's a range of entry level, level 1 and level 2 qualifications that can meet the needs of different learners. And support that progression to GCSE and Grade 4. So the qualifications we've looked at today, so entry-level certificate in maths or ELC, this is typically for your learners with lower levels of prior attainment who are going to struggle with the traditional qualification and are working currently below that Grade 1 GCSE level. So this is something that is specifically designed to support the needs of that group of learners. Functional skills is much more focused on developing practical skills in mathematics that are relevant to everyday life and work, and problem solving is a key component of that qualification. So the reading, the age comprehension of those assessments is higher than it is for ELC or for the Edexcel awards. And the last qualification we looked at, so the Edexcel Awards in Number and Measure, so available at level 1 and level 2. This is all about developing that thorough knowledge and an understanding of those key concepts in number and measure. So a really sound foundation of mathematical techniques. There's a high amount of crossover. They align very closely to GCSE content. And the assessment objectives here are very much focused on understanding and using mathematical techniques. So if you'd like to learn more about subject advisor support that we offer for all of our subjects, you can visit our subject advisor page and sign up for regular updates from your subject advisors using the links on this slide. And a reminder of the different ways that you can contact me. You'll find this little green box at the bottom of all of the qualification pages for our maths and statistics qualifications, and use those links to get in touch, to either email me or to book a Teams meeting if you're looking for some specific advice. And just a reminder that you can find all of our training courses, our upcoming courses, on the Pearson Professional Development Academy using the link on screen there. So thanks for your time today. I hope you've learnt a lot about the different qualifications that are available to support learners working at this stage, whether they're working towards that grade 4 level. And please do make sure to check in for session 2 in this course, in which we can look at the pathways to support learners on that journey, whether we're looking at that support, building it in from Key Stage 3, or specific intervention and strategies to support learners who are in Key Stage 4 and Year 11 right now. We'll also have a specific focus on support for students with SEND in that session. So it will tie in really nicely to give you that overview of how best we can support our learners to be able to experience success, whatever level it is that they are currently working at.